Right. Next speaker is an avid coffee researcher of all the coffee trails from the cup to the farms, learning new ideas and sharing his discoveries with his fellow peers. So please welcome the founder of Blue Apps Media, SK Leng.
Amazing. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. The people clapping really loud are basically my friends coming to see me having my meltdown. 1 month ago, I promised myself not to give coffee talk anymore, so I can focus on more important things. We know that didn't turn out well. So today, I'm here because there's something quite important to talk about. So I asked a friend 2 weeks ago, what should I talk about for 15 minutes here? And they say something transcending, something profound. So we thought maybe we should say something like craft beer is better than coffee. No, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about specialty coffee, flavors, and cultures in a very, very basic way. Today's talk is about communication more than coffee. But I try to add some technicalities, but at the same time, explain it in a very humanistic way. So, the topic is coffee is a tree. Because it's a tree, it interacts with the genetic material interacts with the environment, the weather, the soil, the pest, the human touch of it, how they prune it, how they harvest it. So it's always a living product. It changes from day to day, month to month, year to year. But it has a deeper meaning as well, because every one of us drink coffee, we interpret the coffee very differently. So we start to see coffee as drinking coffee is like going to a party. You don't know exactly what you get, but you just go to a party. And there are a lot of personalities. If we look at this whole room, each one of you can represent a flavor, a quality in a cup. Some flavors are very elegant. Some flavors or some qualities are very subtle. You need to really listen and very, very carefully sit there quietly trying to sense it. And there are some which is very special and quite rare in quality. Some people like special, some people don't like. And then there are some which is very rough and very intense. It doesn't mean it's wrong or it's right or it's good or bad. It's just the way it is. Same as people. So each cup of coffee has its own character, its own blend of personalities like in this room. So we look at cappuccino, black coffee, and an espresso. They can come from the same batch of beans, but they have different expression. They have different balance in a cup. So it gives you different characters. So we start talking about each cup of coffee is like going into a party because it's more relevant to everyone. So some flavors are like going into a party for the first time, meeting new people, and sometimes you see a lot of strangers. If you're a little bit shy, you end up not meeting any flavors at all. You just walk past them, so they can be very much as strangers. And there are coffees that's a bit unique in a way, like they are new friends. You go and have coffee with your friends, and they'll say, this coffee has blueberries, and this coffee has strawberry flavors. And then you start to realize, wow, really, that's right. And some has really beautiful caramel toffee taste, sweetness to it. So that's like meeting new friends. And some are like old friends. Some coffees are like old friends, and they are bitterness, chocolatey, nutty, and caramel. Those are what we consider more consistent, more usual flavors that you find in your coffee. And some are very comfortable. You go and have the coffee, it's beautiful, it's simple, it's like a small dinner party, nothing complicated. We love that. And then some are just ridiculously loud, exciting, but you don't know what flavor they are. You just know it's screaming in your mouth. So it's exciting. It's like going to a concert. And then some coffee that you drink every day, like you meet your girlfriends. You meet your friends, your good friends, you can have every day. There's no issue complaining about that coffee because you feel comfortable with it. And there are some coffee that's so complex, it's so big, there are so many flavors. Even if we try to figure out, we end up realizing we're only talking to flavors that's on our table. And there are like 50 tables out there that is sort of like we hear them, but we don't know what they're talking about, what they are. So some coffee is just really, really complex. And then some like first date, it's like, wow. You drink the coffee, what you get is a beautiful jasmine flavor and maybe some blackcurrant. And that's it. And your friend would introduce you to them, and then you find them a lot of this kind of first date style coffee in single variety. It's not even single origin. Single origin comes from a single plot of land, but single variety is specifically chosen for that genetic material to produce that coffee. So how big is the party in our coffee? Sorry. Okay, wine has about 400 flavors. Generally, that's what they say. Coffee has 800 to 1,500, so that is ridiculous amount of complexity there. So imagine every time you have a coffee, it's like meeting 800 people minimum in your cup. So that's why it is very difficult to understand coffee. That's why a lot of engineers, a lot of doctors, a lot of lawyers quit their jobs and start cafes. Because of this. So there are three sources of flavors when it comes to coffee, where they come from, how they were formed. So basically we talk about the tree, the genetic material in the natural environment, the farm. Eventually the farm, the weather, the morning temperature, the night temperature changes the coffee so much. So that's the natural flavor of the bean and the cherries. And then there's the processing. How do you pick it? How do you wash it? How long you wash it? And how you dry it? All those things comes into consideration. And then there's the roasting side. How you roast it. Basically, the roaster is, to me, they are the greatest guys in the coffee industry because they have to go to the farm to search for some of the best coffee, pay the farmer right, at the same time bring it back and express it to you, introduce those personalities in the cup to you. So it's like roasters are like always introducing new friends to people. So some coffee would actually look like this. There's very little roasting flavor. That means that that's not as ashy, as smoky. And then you retain a lot of natural flavors. So some roasters choose this. Some intentionally add a lot of roasting flavors to it. And then while you roast it darker, you lose a lot more of the natural characteristic. You transform them into something else. And some looks like this. And there is a trend going around chasing after the purity of natural flavors. Whether it's right or wrong, that's really debatable. But they're trying to capture the land itself, the genetic material itself. So they talk about purity of flavors. And that is very much about specialty coffee. So there's three concepts about specialty coffee that it's always, when we use the term specialty coffee, we're referring to the beans. And then when we use the term third wave, we're referring to the trend. There's no right or wrong here. So there's three common concepts. Usually, the first one is the standard one. When you're doing cupping, sampling of the coffee on the table, it has to be 80 points and above. No defects, please. This is something that a lot of specialty coffee people are talking about, the purity of flavors. We want something really pure. So sometimes they don't even want the fermentation quality to it. The fermentation taste can best describe as jackfruit, durian, even fermented banana. And before we go into special flavors, purity is also very subjective. It's controversial. Pure to you might not be pure to you. So, and the same goes to special flavors. There's two reasons why special flavors is a bit tricky, because on one group, in one culture, special flavor might mean really nice, and in another, it might taste like shit. So, for example, chow tofu. In short, it smells like chicken shit. And there are coffee that smells like chicken shit. It was really funny, but it was really strange as well, for a lot of reasons. So that is really culture and traditional dependent. And also the last point about special is that if I have special every day, eventually become common and very typical, and my special coffee is no longer special to me. So that's where consumer is always very shaky. So each cup of coffee has a lot of unique qualities to it. So it's like meeting new people, strange ones. So commonly we talk about acidity, and we talk about sweetness. And because we talk about sweetness, we have to talk about bitterness. And bitterness and sweetness is always very interesting. A lot of people think coffee is bitter. In fact, it's not. But sweetness and bitterness has a very strange relationship. They are always tied together. In our brain, if bitterness is a bit high on one end, our brain would register bitterness really high and basically reduce perception of sweetness. Or if sweetness is slightly higher in terms of bitterness, our brain would basically tilt the scales a bit more in our head. Even though it looks like that, in our mind, it looks like that. And then we talk about body, and we talk about flavors, other flavors. So a lot of research that we are doing is basically trying to understand flavors, is basically looking at acidity. And we look very high detail in acidity, and in fact, I'm carrying a bag of acids in my bag for experimentation on acids. Sweetness, there are 10, 12 different shades of sweetness as well. And body, there's a lot of stuff in there we don't know. Other flavors, what do you like about flavors? It's everything. It's like 800 to 1,500, including cockroach flavors. I had a specialty coffee in Sri Lanka with some friends, and it was really strange because the whole coffee actually smells and tastes like chocolate. Chocolate with cockroach. So it's special, right? So we look at all this, how we look at quality, and then we look at, what about traditional coffee? How do we put traditional coffee in it? And we talk about, what about espresso? Cappuccino, maybe? We talk about instant coffee. Yes, specialty coffee, people really hate instant coffee, but it's important, part of coffee as well. And filtered black coffee. How does this shows up on the scale of quality? So each cup is like a friend. So I might enjoy one cup of my traditional coffee, and it's like going out with a group of friends. And then I might enjoy my cappuccino. It's like going out with another group of friends with different personality. And with espresso, it's like I go out with my drinking buddies because we're really going crazy a little bit on it. And then specialty coffee itself, black filtered coffee, that's a different crowd. So when we look at coffee, it's really a preference of who you want to go out with. It can be a date, it can be a party. How do you look at quality across all this type? How do you unify all the quality of coffee? Because it's culture dependent, it's very subjective. You touch my coffee, I'll kill you, you know. So traditionally, we look at coffee in a pyramid scheme. It's vertical. Traditional coffee, our traditional kopi o, it gets a lot of punishing from a lot of experts. Instant coffee also. And then when you look at specialty coffee at a very high up, it's really good for the guys working there. But in fact, is it really vertical? And we start looking at the coffee tree again. Maybe traditional kopi o is a branch of evolution in coffee. Instant coffee is another branch. Commercial coffee is another branch. And specialty coffee is another branch. And whatever you haven't seen shaded up there, it's probably some coffees that's not in our culture. So we look at coffee as an evolutionary tree in terms of how we put quality scale into it. So we cannot compare an Indian to a Chinese or a Caucasian to an African. We just can't do it. We can't compare an apple to an oranges because even though they belong in a category of food. So maybe coffee as a beverage we should look at it from a point of view of evolutionary tree. And basically that's how I'm going to communicate with my customers. It's okay if you like certain coffee. the way you want it. Because it's on another branch. We are related, but we are working on another branch of coffee. Good? Thank you.
Thank you very much, SK. Just a quick note. If you ever go out to a party with me, I'm like Irish coffee. I may not be Irish, but I certainly drink like one. Okay.
Coffee, I love tea. I love the jabber jiving, it loves